find as much information as you can out about this industry.
Yeah.
And not only does that help you early in your career, but that is something that we have to continue doing throughout your career, is that this isn't an industry where you can just learn it and then make your living off of it. It really is having a day-to-day commitment to learning about the market, or learning what properties just sold, or what came on the market, or who's in the market, and how you can help them. Like, it is a never-ending quest to gain knowledge and information.
Hello, friends. I'm Amy Callinger, and I'm coming back to you with the latest episode of the Performance Mindset Podcast. After a decade of advising some of the top business owners and investors, I've met some really impactful and influential leaders along the way. Today, I'm super excited to have on the show Chad Griffiths. I actually have met him as we're in the same industry, commercial real estate. He does industrial real estate like I do as well. In fact, he's been doing it since 2005. He is also an SIOR like I am, which, if you don't know that, it's like having a board certification in commercial real estate. So that is a great designation to have. He has completed hundreds of deals. In fact, we were trying to tabulate it before we started up, and we really think it could probably be 1,000, if not more. Like I said, I collaborated with him before on his industrial real estate show. And that's how we got to meet, but he's been hosting that for quite some time. He's also been noted by GlobeSt as one of the most influential industrial influencers in the country. So super cool to have you on the show today, Chad. Welcome.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Amy. And it's always a pleasure to talk to people with so much in common. Like you said, both in industrial real estate, we both have SIORs, we both have podcasts. So it's an absolute honor to be here.
Yeah. So talk about, how did you get into industrial real estate? And now you've been doing this for almost 2 decades. Talk to us a little bit about the journey.
Yeah, it was purely accidental. So I was buying and selling some houses with some friends of mine. This is probably 20 years ago now. And we didn't really do great, but we didn't do poorly. And I just got the itch to do real estate. So I became a licensed residential agent in 2004, did it for a year, and just really just didn't like it. It wasn't my cup of tea. I just didn't like being on call all the time, and your evenings and your weekends, and there's not a lot of loyalty to it. So I was attracted to commercial real estate. And I originally thought I'd be working in office towers or in retail, the ones that everybody's familiar with. But the office that I ended up joining was heavily focused in industrial. I knew very little about industrial real estate at all at the time, but just that's who all the mentors that were there and all the experienced brokers were in industrial. So purely by accident, I stumbled into it. And that was 17, 18 years ago now. And I like to think that was the best accident that could have happened, because I went from knowing very little about it to reading about it all the time. I call myself arguably the world's biggest industrial real estate nerd, because yes. I completely geek out about it. I've like sourced old books about it. Every book that has industrial in the title, I've probably bought and read. So it's really gone from something I knew nothing about and had no interest in really, to being a complete life passion of mine, where I just absolutely love everything about it.
That's amazing. And Chad, if you didn't know, is in North America as well. I'm in Florida, and you are in where? Edmonton, right?
Yeah, I'm Western Canada. So it's not, we're a market of about 1 million people. So I would probably put us on par with like Oklahoma City in terms of population and size of the industrial market. But what I talk about even on my own podcast is everything to do largely North American industrial. There's just so much overlap. Like what happens in your market in Florida is probably going to happen in Texas. It's probably going to have remnants happening in California or in Western Canada. So I follow North American industrial real estate quite extensively, in addition to my local market as well. Just you need to be a local market expert in this business. But I also do follow what's happening in the market, North American, sometimes even worldwide.
Yeah. Well, I think it all kind of, I've learned relates to each other. One of my favorite people to hear about, supply chain and industrial trends and those types of things is Casey Conway, who's the chief economist for CCIM. And it was so interesting. He was talking a few years about, we're going to start using the rivers again and how supply chains coming back, stateside into North America. For those that aren't familiar with your geography, since you like to geek out about industrial, can you talk about what might make your market kind of unique versus, probably like my market or what's the dominant type of, industrial and activities that you see there?
Yeah, great question. And just on Casey Conway, he's one of my favorite people in all of real estate. Like he is an absolute genius. So people should follow Casey Conway. Our market, so we're heavy oil and gas. So you can almost call us the Texas of Canada.
Okay.
But the difference that I would say that makes us unique from Texas, and not necessarily in a good way, but just in a unique way, is that we're primarily focused on oil and gas. Whereas even Houston, it's a lot more diversified. There's obviously a big presence of oil and gas in Houston's market, but Houston's much more diversified, many more industries. We're almost like a one-trick pony. So we ride the ebbs and flows of the underlying commodity. So if oil prices go up, our market soars. If oil prices go down, our market tanks. So you can appreciate that as oil went to $150 a barrel in 2013, 2014, our market was crazy. We were sub 1% vacancy, crazy high lease rates. And then as oil went from $150 a barrel to at one point, I think it was 2016, it actually went to negative $37 a barrel, which is just a lot to do with futures and derivatives. And it was a market manipulation to some extent, but we really ride that high. So whereas a lot of markets, and I'm sure you're the same, Amy, is you delineate industrial into like warehousing and manufacturing. And industrial is a fairly broad term, but there's completely different markets. Like warehousing and the logistics, like the Amazons and the big distribution centers that we see, is completely different from a manufacturing property where things are made or produced or assembled. In our market, we're heavily disproportionate to most markets. And from what I've seen, most markets are probably at least now with this big uprising of warehousing space, it's probably more like 70-80% distribution, warehousing space, and 20% manufacturing. We're the inverse of that. So we've got a ton of manufacturing space and limited distribution space. So it creates challenges for sure, but there also can be a lot of opportunities. If oil prices go up, we're very well positioned for a boom in the market. Whereas the last 10 years, just mostly as a result of oil prices, our market's been pretty flat, which is surprising because there's not many industrial markets over the last 10 years that have been flat.
I'm glad you brought that up because I just always curious about other markets. But yeah, it is completely like opposite, because I'm thinking I founded my brokerage in 2010 and I was just really getting, full-time into it because a lot of people know I transitioned out of law.
Yep.
And I remember in like 13, 14, 15, like, we were not like there was a lot of available warehousing. You could have gotten them for, I can think of stuff that's close to $200 a square foot now. And it was like maybe like $50 like a square foot. And you could like rent something for like $4 a square foot, where it's now like $12, $13. And, in the Bay Area, it's just completely different versus, that was like your peak time. And now you're in a completely different state now where you're more level. and we are just like trucking along here in Orlando, no pun intended.
You're in I think Florida is such a great market too, because
Yeah,
I think one of the big drivers of industrial is population growth. So
yeah.
with population growth comes more spending, and people need warehouses. So that is a very simplified way of describing it. But I like Florida from the standpoint of just huge population migration. So
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
your market is booming. My market is flat. So it's just different markets at different times.
It's incredible to see the population growth here. Like, and we talked a lot about it in your show, like rooftops lead, and then commercial follows, like in order of like retail, and then officing, and then generally industrial is like the last to like catch up. Although we do have some spec inventory here. But it's made it that you could go out to like dinner somewhere and not have to worry about a reservation if you're in the non-touristy areas of town. No, no, no. You really have to be like intentional and think about like, where am I going to go out for dinner on Friday or Saturday night? And you have to think about it a few weeks ahead of time.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, yeah. But it's a good problem to have. So it keeps me busy. So since we're talking about industrial, you have your industrial real estate show. How long have you had that? What made you think about starting it? I think it's awesome too that you have the live format. I'm not that brave.
Yeah, it's that comes with a certain amount of stress too. So I originally started doing recorded episodes. So the seeds were planted when we went through the pandemic in 2020, and I'm sure that this was all over the world, that there's just a general slowdown for at least a few weeks, if not a month.
Yep.
And where nothing happened. Like I couldn't get people to make any decisions. It was completely dead.
You're
And I
talking
just
about like April 2020?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just couldn't sit idly. Like I'm just not one of those people that can just sit back and relax. I get too anxious and I just always want to do things. So I'd always had the idea of doing some kind of videos or something on industrial real estate. So it originally started by just setting up a YouTube channel where I talked about industrial real estate. And eventually I thought, well, you know what? I could get some experts on here to fill in the gaps on what I don't know. So
Right.
today I interviewed an architect, and he just talked about all the different things to do with industrial architecture. And I've had lawyers and other brokers like yourself on, and I've had property owners and developers. And I just thought if I can add some value to the community by having these experts come on, it could be informative and just fun, and a lot of benefit for me as well. Like even just getting to know you has been great,
Yeah.
because now I know someone in Orlando that I didn't know 6 months ago. So there's been a lot of benefit for me. I started very basic, like it was just my laptop, and I spoke into the mic in the laptop and the webcam on there, and it's evolved to I moved it to do live last year. And I have a podcast producer now that helps me with all that and moderating the questions that come in. And it's a different format where people really have to think on their feet, but you get very genuine answers, right? So they don't have time to necessarily come up with an answer to the question, but I'm generally giving them questions that they're experts about. So if I were to ask you a question about Orlando industrial and what the market is, you're going to be able to give me that information very easily. So I'm not trying to give them gotcha questions or trying to stump them. I really want to ask them questions about what they're experts in already. And it's been fun. It's very niche, as you know, like not everyone's interested in industrial real estate, but those that are become hyper focused on it. So yeah, the coolest thing I think is that I've met people now all over the world. I even interviewed a guy in China. So all over the world, I've made some great friendships and business contacts now that I didn't have. So it's really been a win-win, where I think I'm creating some good content for the community that they can learn from these experts. And then from the benefit that I'm getting is just building my network with awesome people.
Yeah. One of my really, really good friends is Delee Becker, and she's in Texas, and she is really active on social media. And she always says givers get. And so I've found having my own podcast, and I'm sure you found too from having your show, just like how just giving all that information out to the community, how beneficial it is. So
completely agree. Yeah, it goes a long way because it doesn't come across as like an advertisement or a commercial. It really is just providing as much value as you can. And then if people get something from it, I think that they appreciate it. And it just comes full circle. So I think that that's the best way to approach social media in general is go approach it with an audience facing mindset that you're trying to add value to the audience as opposed to just having to be all about me. And it's worked somewhat well for me so far.
Well, what I find is interesting too, being on your show or just even having my own podcast, is that then I think people get to like kind of like know you, and you get to have, perhaps it's just a digital relationship, like you have a phone call with someone or then a Zoom call. But then I think it's really interesting, and people can figure out whether, well, Chad's the kind of person I'd want to talk to about industrial real estate or not, or like whether they want to talk to me, Amy, about like business, industrial down here, like in Orlando, or whether they want, consulting for their business or whatever. I think it's cool too, because you get a flavor for someone before you like met them. So, yeah.
I've had that comment so many times where I'll talk to someone, whether I meet them in person or I have a Zoom call with them. I've heard it numerous times that people have said that they felt like they already knew me, because you're spot on. Is that if they watch an hour video, or perhaps they watched numerous hour videos or listen to podcasts, they're going to feel a connection because they're going to feel that you've already talked to them. So right. I've had that comment a number of times.
Yeah. And I think it's cool too. Like, I'm going to use Delee's quote again too. And she's like, and if you don't like me, then don't call me. So I think it's also like a good thing too. The people that are calling you are like, okay, this is a cool guy. And then those that aren't are like, and then they'll pass. So
I love that quote, is if you don't like me, don't call me. That it's so true. Is we can't win everything. Right. We can't be likable for everybody. There's going to be just some people that don't want anything to do with you. They just don't like your personality. They don't like your style. They don't like my white shirt. They don't like your red glasses. There's any number of reasons that someone just might not like us, but we're not trying to win everything. Right. We're just trying to create connections, provide some value. And there are going to be people that like you. There are going to be people that don't like you. Just real funny kind of note on that as well, because I take that same approach as even when I end my podcasts, and I've got to be the only person on YouTube doing this, is I say, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you didn't like it, hit the thumbs down button. And I can't imagine there's many people asking the audience to hit the thumbs down button. And occasionally some people do. But my whole idea is, I genuinely do want that feedback. If you didn't like it, then I'd like to know that. So hit the thumbs down button. And I think that goes to that same line of thinking that your friend has there is, if you don't want to call me, don't call me. It's fine. But if you do want to call me, that'd be great too.
Yeah. So, that is interesting. I had the opportunity to record another podcast today. So of course you guys are airing like at separate times, but he works with a lot of different CEOs, and it was interesting to say, I had a point with this. Let me think what my point was. He was saying, you're open to getting the thumbs down button. And a lot of people are afraid of failure or getting negativity. But I think that's what really like shapes us. And he's worked with over 30,000 CEOs. And he was saying to me, that was what he's now found to be like the characteristic, is those that have had the setbacks or gotten the negativity, that they're able to like evolve and grow. And I think that's pretty, it's cool to think, because I think sometimes people, they want to have this Pinterest perfect life and everything is great, but it's not.
It's not. It's hard. And it takes work, and there is a lot of failure. But I think also to his point, 30,000 CEOs is astonishing. But I agree. Is how are you going to get better, and how are you going to evolve and go to the next level if you're not actually getting honest feedback? So yeah, I welcome feedback of all kinds. I say if someone wants to make fun of my shirt or make fun of my voice or my hair, or to tell me, like I'm open. I'm an open book. I don't have that thin skin where I'm going to take offense to it. If anything, if enough people say they don't like my shirt, then I'm going to change my shirt. So it's I do like that feedback. I think it is helpful.
I am a recovering perfectionist, I must admit, but now I have gotten completely over that. And I've realized that done is better than perfect, and then to just get on with whatever it is I'm doing, and then I can learn from it later on. But just do it and don't worry about it, and it will just make life so much more easy. So
100% agree. And
yeah.
that's kind of why I like the live format too, is that it's not perfect. I say stupid things all the time. Like I've even said that as long as I keep a ratio of like 9 to 10 things that aren't stupid to every one stupid thing that I say, I like to be in that wheelhouse because I think that's a good ratio. But it's genuine, right? It's because you can't fake it. It comes out. If I say something stupid, it's there, and people can call me on it. But I think that just is that done is better than perfect, and in its real raw sense of doing it live. So that's one of the reasons I thought it'd be fun to do.
I got off of your show and I literally was like, what? For the rest of the day. It was like a jolt of like energy doing it live. There was definitely much more like adrenaline. I really like doing my podcast recordings, but I definitely felt a lot of adrenaline like afterwards. It was pretty cool. And then not to mention like then like I'm just having like boop, 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 these emails like coming through, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. So like, yeah.
Yeah, it is very cool, and I'm the same way. Like I've done 100 episodes now, I think, and I still get off the interview and I'm just excited. I'm like, I love that. I feel so good. I'm excited right now with this. I love talking to doing these kind of shows because I feel like that invigoration of just talking with someone that's like-minded and has so many similarities and just have a great conversation like we are. I love it. I get so fired up for this. And I think more people should be doing podcasts. I really do think either starting a podcast, which is a lot more work, or even just being a guest on a show, exactly as you said, is that it fires you up after. You get so excited after getting off that call.
Well, I feel like I know myself even better, both personally and professionally now, as I've been through this podcast journey. Because like, I just think I'm learning so much, and it's evolved. And I think it's made me better at asking really good questions from the clients that I work with, and like understanding their needs and how their business is going to work. I feel like I am a hell of a lot better of a broker than I ever was. Not that I wasn't a good broker before, but I feel like I'm like a million times better, like, because I know what questions to ask.
I 100% agree with that too. And for 2 years that I've been doing it, and I've been doing it for a long time already, I definitely feel like I've become a better broker just by, like you said, getting to know yourself. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat.
Yeah, I know.
All
I was
those
sick last week. I'm like, oh.
yeah, it must just be going around right now. But yeah, I agree. It does. There's so many benefits to do it. It's just like getting to know who you are yourself, and getting to meet people, and that content can live on the internet essentially forever. So I kind of equate it to, it's like putting breadcrumbs out there that you never know who's going to find one of those breadcrumbs and then reach out to you and maybe hire you, or leads to another opportunity. It's just that there's so many reasons in my mind that to do podcasting and to create content like that.
It's interesting. I went back the other day and I think I did my first, like I have what's called Beyond Your Space Needs, because that's my brand. And I started in January 2017, and my hair was actually brown then, and then it went blonde for a little while, and now I'm back to the same colors when I started that. But I go back to it and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, who's all watching these? Because they get more views. And I'm like, oh, it's constantly evolving, but it's interesting to kind of go back to like the first ones that I did. So
yeah, that maybe that's something I should do sometime as well. But I'd be the same way. I'd be like, oh man, the ratio of stupid things to non-stupid things I would have said back then was probably 50-50. So I don't know if I should go back and watch those or not.
What made me think to record this one on a roof with the wind like going? Like, why did I do that? Like, but it's okay. Like, I think it's so much nicer now that we have like Zoom and all these other things. You were talking about all the people that you've met in this journey, and so I saw one of your recent collaborations. But talk to me about some of your favorite collaborations that you've done recently.
Yeah, so it's been very cool, and I like to think that as the podcast grows, you just have more credibility in the industry, and you can have that confidence to reach out to someone.
Yeah.
So a few that jump to mind right off the bat. I interviewed the former CEO of Prologis, Walt Rakovich. So like
Wow.
former CEO of a Fortune 500 company, largest industrial property
Wow.
owner in the world. Yeah, and he was so awesome. Like he gave
Yeah.
me an hour of his time, where like to get an hour of time of a former S&P 500 CEO is like the
Mhm.
very, very difficult. But he was so genuine and grateful with his time. That was a really cool discussion. And then one recent one as well, which was really cool, was Bob Knackel, who's arguably the most successful broker in the world. He's done 20 some $billion worth of transactions. He's well known. He's sold his previous firm to Cushman and Wakefield for $100 million. Heck, he's the real deal when it comes to like being a power broker.
Yeah.
And same thing. I reached out to him, and he was happy to come on. And I spent an hour with him, and now we follow each other on social media. And I'd like to say that we're internet buddies now. But that all came from just reaching out to him and having that platform of a podcast. So yeah, a few other ones that are like that, like ultra high profile. But I also just love talking to even like an architect that I talked to today, based out of Dallas, who's not a famous architect in any sense of being like a Frank Lloyd Wright or anything, but just a really knowledgeable guy. So it's been cool. Yeah, it's the opportunity to collaborate and interview people all the way from just a local market expert all the way up to Walt Rakovich or Bob Knackel. Bob Knackel has been very exciting for me.
Yeah. I first met Bob Knackel actually in person. I don't think he had much of a social media presence. It was November 2019, and Rod Santamassimo
Yep.
had one of his conferences here, like in Orlando. And I was actually 9 months pregnant with my first baby. So like I got this big thing, and they started the seminar early in the morning. And then Bob came for like an after dinner thing, like drinks and like questions.
Yep.
I think they talked until like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So I'm like
Wow.
9 months like pregnant, and like I stayed up for I don't know how many hours like straight just learning about commercial real estate because I'm a complete nerd. And then come to find out, like the next morning, I'm like, oh, I don't feel very good. And I went to the hospital, like you're in labor. So I was that was my
Wow.
first meeting, but I so wanted to hear what he said and had to like stay up, but I had to skip the second day. I stayed up a
Understandably.
little too late, and they're like, yeah, you'll be ready to go. You're starting like early labor. And I'm like, oh, well, that sucks. But at least I got to meet and like hear the whole like story and all those things. But that goes back to what like my friend Delise says, though, givers like get, and he is like a generous person with his time, even as busy as he are. And so like I want to make that same commitment. Like if I ever make it as big as Bob Knackel, which I probably won't because I'm in Orlando, which is a much smaller market, but I'll always still like give back for someone that wants to like collaborate and stuff. So
Yeah, I agreed. If Bob Knackel can do it, and a super busy guy with so much on the go, and he's so ultra successful, if he can give back and
yeah,
provide value to people, I mean, there's no reason why anyone can't. So I'm with you on that one.
yeah. Like I don't know. I think sometimes people get like they feel like they're too important. And I think like when you start to like not have that humility and like remember that you were a broker or just starting a business or just starting investing, whatever like your journey is in life. I think if you start to like forget that, then you're gonna have some problems, I think. So
Agreed.
I think, yeah, I think it has to go with the humility. And like he also does what's really interesting. I feel like he always like pays back to like where like he started. And I think that does keep you like humble. And he thinks back to like when he first started his brokerage. So
Yeah, and he has every reason to be a very arrogant and self praising broker just
yeah,
because of his success, but he's not. Like he's just such a genuine, likable person. So yeah, amazing man.
yeah. Awesome. So like, how is like, because basically being a broker, whether you're like on your own or within a brokerage shop, you basically are your own business. Like, how is it different than you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, that's a good point. Is I didn't necessarily think it'd be a business within a business, which that's what we're essentially doing. Is we're in a commission based business, so it's the revenue that we generate is what we earn, and if you don't earn any revenue, there's no paycheck at the end of the day. I think what I underestimated at the beginning was just how sophisticated and complex the clients would be, and I appreciate that commercials, you're going to be dealing with businesses and there's going to be businesses of all size, but some of the companies are just remarkably sophisticated in how they underwrite properties or how they go through their various processes on doing it. And sometimes it can be very lengthy just because those processes can be so complex. So a transaction can take several months, if not several years, before they find the right property and matches all of their processes. So that was a big learning experience for me. And then the other thing that I'd say is that the competition is fierce, not in a mean sense or in a bad sense, but just in the standpoint that our competitors are all very sophisticated and competent people. Whereas I came from residential, which I don't want to denigrate the residential industry by any means, but there's people in there that they did it as like a hobby. There's some people that would just do it part-time, and it showed because they weren't professional. Whereas the vast majority of brokers that I've met in commercial are very smart, sophisticated men and women who are very good at their job. And so there's not as much competition. Like residential is probably a factor of, for the average amount of agents to commercial is probably 10 to 1. So there's a lot more competitors in residential, but the quality of the competition in commercial and industrial is fierce. So that I think I underestimated that as well. Is just our competitors are very, very good at what they do. So it causes all of us to have to step up our game as well.
You know, it's interesting you say that. And if you're not very good and you don't geek out on it, then you're not going to last. And I think that those that are good at their craft, I think that even though there's all this competition, I think there's a lot of collaboration. I am not the top industrial broker in Orlando, but perhaps, one day I will be. But the guy that's actually number one, I found out from someone the other day. It's like, yeah, he's a really good broker. And like, when we do deals together, whether he's on the other side or which side we're on, I feel like, at least for me, we're pretty collaborative here in the Orlando market. And like, we know who the good people are that we can like trust. And it's fierce. We're obviously all like fighting to get different assignments and properties and, those types of things. But then when it comes to like doing the deal, I feel like it's pretty collaborative.
Yeah,
is that what you find?
Yes. And it is such a unique industry that we do have to compete with each other for business. So if you're trying to get a listing or if you're trying to represent a tenant, you might be competing with 5 or 6 other brokers to get that business. And that can be very tough competition. But when one person gets that business, all of a sudden we cooperate with each other.
Right.
So we compete against each other to earn the business, and then we have to cooperate with each other to get the business done, which is just there's no other industry that I can think of that would have that same structure.
Yeah. I do another asset type other than industrial, but I just got a gem like listing like in like the heart of one of our like most prized like cities next to Orlando in Winter Park. And I know there were other like brokers involved, but like I like won. But now like everybody's like, okay, I have this buyer, and whether it's like industrial or even other asset classes, it's like, we're all trying really hard to get the listing or get the tenant rep assignment or whatever. But then once it is, it's like, oh, you have a tenant, Amy? You won that tenant? Okay, well, I have this property over here. And then like, it's like, okay, let's come together, kumbaya, and let's get the deal done. So.
Yeah, that is such an interesting element of the business that if you're an outsider and you hadn't considered being in commercial real estate, that comes at you pretty fast, that observation. But most people wouldn't know it's that competitive element and then also a collaborative element simultaneously.
while still zealously advocating for our clients. So I don't want people to think
Absolutely.
like we're bros over here and like we're not like, but we're totally, you have to beat up each other like sometimes too. Like if you're representing the tenant and you see something like gnarly in the lease and something's supposed to be fixed and it's not fixed, share of maybe the park or whatever it is, like you have to like beat each other up. But then at the end of the day, you can come back together again.
Yeah, that's a very important distinction, is that we're not colluding to
Right.
just in the effort of getting a deal done at the expense of our clients, but we're more just cooperating where other agents or brokers will want to work with you and they'll take your call and they'll have conversations. So there's definitely a difference between cooperating and colluding.
Yeah, well, I think I've had clients have the misconception before because I'm being like very nice to the other brokers or we're very collegiate, but I'm like, no, don't mistake my collegiateness for, like that. I'm still like, if something's not right, I am going to be, intense about making sure that we get this deal right for you. So
That's a
yeah.
very important message.
Yeah. So, but some people think that because like, I'm like, hey, and then they're like, wait, like these people are like friends or like they still looking out? No, we totally are. I think that we're just professional. And I think that does differentiate it from residential is I do see some cattiness. I'm talking to one of my friends right now that just got licensed and I think one of her friends wanted her really bad to like join like her brokerage and like they're not going to join that brokerage and they're just like really like it's very like personal versus I think commercial real estate and in industrial in particular it's not like that. Like it's like, oh, okay, that person moved here or they're going to go here and it's not like a big thing.
Yeah, and it's a small business too. Like there's just not as many commercial or industrial brokers out there. So just by nature of doing deals with other brokers, you get some familiarity. But yeah, I really like your point though, is that you can be friendly with another broker, but that doesn't mean you're forsaking your duty as a broker to represent your client's best interest. That's a very important distinction to make.
Yeah. I was trying to get this warehouse listing too, and another one of my industrial friends like called me. He's like, I wanted to let you know that I want it. And I'm like, he's like, but they're really close. And I was like, well, what made it happen? And they said, oh, well, I knew their CPA or something like that. Like he had something that like edged me out. I'm like, oh, I'm like, but at the end of the day, then if I bring a buyer there, we're both going to like represent like our interests, but we're still nice to each other, which is good. So
Absolutely.
do you have a favorite project that you've worked on? Maybe help develop something or maybe one of your early listings that was really challenging. What do you think that would be?
Yeah, there's one that comes to mind where I had a tenant group and wasn't a huge user. They were 25,000 square feet or so, and we couldn't find them anything. So I approached a developer that I knew, and we ultimately came to an agreement where we found a 3-acre parcel of land, and they did a roughly 60,000 square foot build to suit. And one of the tenant took 25,000 and it left 35,000 square feet or so that we ended up leasing to 2 other groups. So it wasn't a massive project. Like there's deals happening every single day in North America that are gigantic deals. So in the context of that, it wasn't a huge deal, but it still was a really cool sale where we got to sell the land. Then we got to be involved in the build to suit on the building. We got to put the one tenant in there, and then we filled 2 other tenants in there. And that developer has a very soft spot in his heart for us, just because we were able to put that together essentially from nothing. So I think that that's one of the coolest parts about our business, is that we can really shape projects. And there's also deals that are very simple where you're just doing a lease. But one like that was really cool, just being involved in a very complex process from start to finish and seeing that project be a big success was really exciting, that one.
Yeah, I'm working with a user now and we're still going back and forth. We're going to do a build suit, find something, already like existing, but it is cool that you were able, like, I couldn't find this 25,000 square feet in the market. Let me make it appear.
Like have a magic wand kind of thing.
And then you made yourself 3 deals then out of it. So yeah. Wait,
And then
no,
I've since
4,
done
like the acquisition,
yeah,
the 3 leases.
yeah, and I've done a number of deals with that developer since too. So, with
Right.
partly that deal was, that was a very lucrative deal for that developer. Like he came out really well ahead on that. So
Yeah.
in addition to that, they've brought us on to do numerous other projects. So we've done a lot of work with that, which is large part because of that one development we did with them.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think sometimes people wonder, because I'm my own boutique shop, and like, how did you get that person? Like, wait, where did they come? And like sometimes like I'm doing things that are like smaller, but I can see, because I work with people that are more like a growth mindset or like growth oriented, and you can eventually grow your own like stable of clients. So
Mhm. It's a
and then
beautiful
you
part about this
grew a
business.
bunch more deals out of that one deal. So
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I love this business is you can really foster those relationships and get a lot of repeat business just from one single client that you've performed for. There's a lot more loyalty I've found in this industry than my experience being in residential, where it's you're almost more of like a commodity where whoever's available at any given time is the one that gets used. You can build a lot of loyalty in this business.
yeah. What's interesting is we're talking about getting into the industry. Do you have any advice for anyone if they're thinking about doing industrial real estate or commercial real estate? What would be like a good piece of advice, like, or something like you wish you would have known?
I wish I would have talked to more people in advance, and I almost settled on the one company that I talked to, thinking again that I was going to do office or retail, and I settled on industrial very quickly. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would just want to talk to as many people as I could, just to get their insights into the market and see what perhaps there's a brokerage firm that's doing really well right now and has a lot of market share and they're looking to grow, or what the state of the landscape is. I think I would just spend more time being inquisitive and asking as many questions as I could and getting to know as many people as I could, and then make the best decision you can with all that information available. I rushed into it, and I'm very grateful that I did. I wouldn't change the outcome by any means, but I think that there's a huge degree of luck. The fact that I threw one dart and that one dart happened to hit the bullseye. Instead, I think a much better practice would be like throw a whole bunch of darts and then pick which one you think is going to be the best one. I got very lucky in how I did it. I would ask way more questions and try to meet way more people before making a decision again.
Well, I also think one thing I wish I would have done too, like early on, is have gotten a coach earlier. Like I didn't get a coach like right away, and I didn't really, having someone who maybe coached a lot of different people to get their perspective. I think I really sold myself short on what I could have done, and I probably could have done more if I had a coach, I think.
Great point. And it's similar to you. I did get a coach a few years in, and I think having that coach early would have accelerated that learning curve and getting yourself up to being a productive broker sooner. So I agree with you completely that having a coach would be hugely beneficial, especially at the beginning.
Yeah, it would have really benefited me. And I think we talked both about like having CCIM and SIOR being very helpful for us, especially the SIOR.
Yeah. And I got my CCIM pretty early as well. And I think that just helped have a little bit of extra credibility in the market that you're serious about it. You went through the motions, you learned some stuff. I think that's also very helpful.
Yeah. Well, very cool. I know we've been going for some time. I want to make sure, like, if there's anything you want to talk about and that maybe we didn't cover or otherwise or bring up.
I would say if anyone's listening and they're just curious, is find as much information as you can out about this industry.
Yeah.
And not only does that help you early in your career, but that is something that we have to continue doing throughout your career, is that this isn't an industry where you can just learn it and then make your living off of it. It really is having a day-to-day commitment to learning about the market, or learning what properties just sold, or what came on the market, or who's in the market, and how you can help them. Like, it is a never-ending quest to gain knowledge and information. So I think anybody that's either considering an industry like this, or is already in it and just wondering how they can take it to the next level, just have that curiosity where you just want to ask more questions, learn more things, meet more people. And I think that really is a simple way of tackling a complex business, but it also in itself gives a lot of the answers to the problems that you have, just because you're asking questions. So I guess in a roundabout way, if you don't ask the question, it's very hard to get the answer. So I would say, and I'm sure you're the same on this too, Amy, is that I'm happy to be a resource. I'd like to think that my channel provides a lot of information, but I'm always happy to chat with people, and I'm sure you are. So if someone does want to reach out, if there's something that we didn't cover, I'm a pretty open, transparent book. I've said before, there's no question that I won't answer. Might not always be a good answer or a smart answer, but I'll always give an answer to a question. So if someone wants to reach out and just ask a question, I'm more than happy to have that chat.
And then how do people reach you? What's the best way? Is it Twitter, LinkedIn, email? How's usually the easiest way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm probably most active on YouTube. Just that's where I put a lot of my focus. So leaving me a comment on YouTube is great. But I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn and my email, which I'll say, and maybe you can just put in the description. It's just Griffiths, Griffiths CRE@gmail.com. And that's probably the easiest way, because I do try to reply to all my emails every day.
Yeah, but if you watch any of his episodes, and shameless plug, you can watch the one with me in it. I'm just kidding.
Definitely, we should put a link to that. That was a fun conversation.
It was an update like on this whole like insurance like debacle here, like in Florida, it's still all over the place. I'm closing on an investment deal like this week, and one quote was 10,000, and another one was like 15,000, another one was like 5, and like it's just like all over the place. But then we figured out the 5 was like very like bare bones, obviously. But I think some insurance carriers are quoting prices that are so high just not to even like maybe insure here. I don't know what it is. So it's more will be revealed, I guess, in the coming months. So
that'll be a big trend to watch going forward,
because it really will affect things, as we talked about. But well, I really appreciate it. Looking forward to continuing to stay in contact with you, Chad. Absolutely. It's always a pleasure. And this is Amy Calandrino. I'm signing off. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share, download, all the different things, so that we can continue to bring you these episodes.
Thanks again, Amy. Thanks for having me on.